Okay, for this week, we are going to talk about facilities planning, design, and equipment. All right, so some things we're going to cover in this chapter: planning, just what are our considerations, our safety, productivity, other concerns. A little bit about design and layout, some space allocations, dining room design and kitchen design, and then some of the equipment that we're going to need: equipment selection, food preparation equipment, serving equipment, things like that. All right, so when it comes to planning, you can kind of expect that a lot of things when you are planning to open a restaurant or food service, there's a lot of regulations that we run into for these. So planning takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You can probably plan on if you're opening a restaurant, if from start to finish, it's probably going to be about 18 months as far as getting all of the permits, the designs, things like that. So things we want to consider when we're opening a restaurant, if we found a location, how much space is needed in the kitchen and the dining room areas. How is food going to move through your kitchen? So not only is how your guests going to move through the location, but also how is it set up for our purveyors to come and to deliver our goods to us? We also have to think about how much room for storage is needed because if we plan on being very busy, we're going to have a lot of food on hand to serve our guests. Our planning phase also takes into consideration things like regulatory and safety issues. So things like making sure that we're ADA compliant, that we are safe. We're working with like OSHA and things like that, so that we don't have to worry about those problems in the future. There are some things that we need for location specific restrictions. And then whatever your unique concept requirements are. So let's say you're opening a Tex Mex place, you might need a tortilla machine and you might need a space for that. Maybe if you're doing wood fired pizza, you've got a oven in the middle of your kitchen that's kind of a showcase. So those are some things that we want to think about. All right, so when we talk about how much space we're going to need, and this is per guest, this is what our industry standards are. In quick service restaurants, we figure each guest needs about 10 to 15 square feet per person. Something like a fast casual is going to be a little bit more, like 12 to 18. Family and mid scale, 15 to 18. Upscale and fine dining, we're going to go from about 16 to 20. Okay, so if you see the difference between a QSR, we're looking at about 10 to 15 versus fine dining, 16 to 20. QSR, we're not really expecting those guests to stay very long. We're not expecting them to sit down. Um, we're not making that dining room super comfortable for them. But when we look at fine dining, we're going to need more space in between tables so that people can have conversations, so it's not loud. They feel comfortable. We're going to have larger chairs there because they're padded. They're banquet chairs and they're not just plastic booths. We have to have room for our service staff to walk through there. So those are some things that we want to consider, and that's why we need so much more space in these different formats. In business and industry, 12 to 18, depending, sometimes we're looking at cafeteria style, sometimes there are areas where you can sit down. Schools, 8 to 11 square feet per person, and that's because the people are just smaller. Okay, and again, they're not meant to stay there for very long. They get their food, they eat, and then they go to recess or whatever. Same thing with universities and colleges. It's more of a function of feeding them and not necessarily any other sort of entertainment or hospitality. Same thing with healthcare, sports and recreation, 10 to 18. And then in corrections, we do allow a little bit more space because of the nature of the people that are in the correctional facilities. All right, so looking at this picture right here, we have a kind of a rendering of an upscale theme restaurant, okay? And so some things we want to consider here, especially when you're thinking about your project, if you're thinking about opening QSR versus fast casual versus fine dining, there are some aspects here that we kind of want to consider. So first off, let's take a look at the lighting, okay? If you look at the blue lights that they have there, we have some nice pendant lighting, okay? It's going to really spotlight some tables. It's probably very ambient. Our guests are going to look good under the light. Our pictures are going to look good under the light. So if we're thinking about like Instagram, Those photos are going to look nice. It's going to look nice if we take a picture of the dining room. It's not, you know, um, fluorescent lighting. It's again, it's much more comfortable. We do see that we have in the back there, there's flowers on each table. Okay, so each table might have a floral arrangement, which is it's a nice touch. You're not going to see that in a quick service restaurant. You walk in there, you feel like you kind of do have you're at home, right? We see the fireplace there. Now the fireplace, um, we could put more tables there and we could generate more revenue. Or we see we've put a fireplace there and there's lounge seating. So this person has anticipated that because they've created this cozy atmosphere, they believe that their guests are going to come, they're going to sit down, they're going to order a couple drinks, they're going to hang out. And as they hang out and as they sit there, they're going to generate revenue and their guests are going to come in because of something like that fireplace. Okay, we also see our seating in that lounge area is nice and comfortable. We've got some, I'm sure it's nicely padded. I'm sure that if you could imagine touching the banquettes, it's probably nice to your touch, right? This isn't, it's not pleather seating, right? It's not plastic. Your legs aren't going to stick to it if you're wearing shorts. Okay, it's going to be nice and comfortable so that again, you sit there and you generate revenue. And then we see we've got our bar can service all of these guests. Okay, so our bartenders have to be very presentable at all times because we can see if you're sitting in the lounge, you're sitting at the dining room tables, you always can view what those bartenders are doing. And so when we design our drink menu, again, we want it to be Instagrammable. We want it to be very visually pleasing. Our bartenders are going to be clean cut. We need to consider their uniforms because they're always going to be on display. They'll be, pressed shirts or not faded. Our name tags are going to tell us a little bit about them. And it's going to kind of reflect the blank. Our staff should reflect the brand. And I'm sure there's other things in this picture we could kind of identify here. But those are just some of the things that I want you to consider as you're putting together your project, or if you're thinking about what the difference is between fast casual and fine dining. And there's just the little details here. All right, so for our design and layout, for a traditional rule of thumb, we should allocate about 30% of food service operation space to the dining room, leaving the remaining space to production, a greeting area, restrooms, and so on. Okay, so we rent a space, we build a building, and yes, you could seat a whole bunch of people there, but if you don't have the support to feed those people, to produce the food items, um, service your staff, then you're not going to be successful. So you want to make sure you're set up for success. Also, we have to think about all of our business that we have that goes out the front door. So putting a governor on that and making sure that our dining room area, we're not just looking at seats, we're also looking at menu count and entree counts. Revenue is also generated in the dining room, and therefore every effort is made to maximize dining room space. Okay, so in that 30%, we do want to make sure we're maximizing that. So again, a that fireplace, if that's going to generate revenue, that's the best use of your space. Okay, but if it's not going to generate revenue, it's probably best that you put another table there because an empty seat is generates no revenue, but a guest sitting there is going to bring money in. The production area must be large enough to support the operations menu, sales volume, and staff. And most modern designers now devote about 25 to 40% of the space traditionally used in the dining room area for the production area. And then, of course, this all depends on the type of operation in which you want to design and how it applies. All right, so when we think about kitchen design, there's 10 key questions we want to ask, all right? So what type of food are we going to preparation is dictated by the menu. Are we doing burgers or is it steaks? Are we butchering? If you're serving steaks, do you need a dry aging room? Do you need space to if you remember from 11 Madison Park, we saw how they were they were drying out the duck skins. Okay, they need a full room for that. Okay. Will some menu items be produced in prepackaged form, requiring little preparation? So, if we can get these items already prepared for us, maybe we don't need so much storage. Maybe we don't need so much space for our butchers or our prep people. Can some of the food preparation take place in another location? Okay, so especially if you're a multi unit organization, having a commissary that can mass produce items and deliver them out can save on labor and also can make sure that your product's very consistent. Also, again, saving on space in your kitchens. What type of volume of meals will be produced in a given day part and how many day parts are serviced? Okay, so if we're serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which ones are busiest? And that's probably going to dictate the type of equipment that we prioritize. And we also want to make sure that it flips to our other menu items. How many distinct courses will likely be served? How elaborate is the menu in terms of food variety? Um, the more items that you serve, if there's not as much cross utilization of product, you're going to have to store a lot of food items. Are there unique service or logistical aspects to consider? How much item customization is needed? What equipment is available to reduce kitchen space? Okay, so utilizing not only your linear space, but also um, shelving and underneath your prep tables as storage space as well. And what changes might be required or desired in the future? Okay, so if you are looking to expand, if you think maybe you'll be changing concepts, again, how can we rearrange things to be more workable? So when we think about equipment needs, we need to consider first off the menu. All right. So what are the largest things that we're going to produce? Those are kind of our stock equipment. What what's priority? Okay. If we are known for grilled items, we need to make sure that grill is takes top priority as far as real estate and prime location in the kitchen. If you're a burger place, same thing. If you're a bakery, where are the ovens? Where are the mixers? We also have to think about equipment produced in large quantities and standard configurations. Okay, so when you look to buy equipment for a food service operation, it's not like going to Williams Sonoma or Bed Bath and Beyond or Target and buying, a KitchenAid mixer and a chopper and things like that. Go to places like Restaurant Depot, and they have very large items to mass produce these things. So, for example, if you sell tons of barbecue sauce or queso or things like that, you can buy 100-gallon steam kettles and you can make these things in large batches because it doesn't make sense to have 100 pots going when you can make it all at once. You can also have this equipment custom built, and you might need it built just for your location, but that is something you want to consider. Think about your special food production requirements, your concept requirements, and resolve design and layout issues. Okay, so sometimes you might not have the space to bring in all that equipment. So you're going to have to make a decision on your menu as far as what you're going to serve. All right. When we think about food preparation equipment, again, here we see an example. We've got an industrial mixer, which is about a 20-quart capacity. That's five gallons. And a KitchenAid mixer you might have at your house. That's 5 quarts. Both of them can be used in for food service operations. You might even see them both at the same location, just depending on what they're making with those items, what quantities they need. But you see, there's a big difference. You're probably not going to put that 20-quart mixer in your house. Um, so there's lots of different equipment out there, lots of different choices. You need to think about, again, how much you're producing, what's realistic for your location. You also need to think about the availability of utilities. So we need to think if we're going to use gas, electric, or steam, right? So steam would require not only electricity, but also water lines to the equipment. Um, Gas can work when there's no electricity, but it's also very hard to see if you're trying to cook without electricity. And then electricity. we can, it just, again, it depends on your needs and what you have in that location. You have to think about the cost of the installation, and what that means. You can also think about renting some of this equipment if you're not fully committed to purchasing quite yet. A lot of people will rent things like dishwashers because, one, it's a very large purchase, but two, sometimes when you rent or you lease these things, it comes with a maintenance plan. So if there's any sort of maintenance that needs to be done, if it breaks down, they come and they fix those items for you. Also, when we think about our different concepts, we need to consider our serving equipment. All right. So it depends on your concept and dining room design. Okay. So a fast casual concept will likely have maybe plastic flatware or that kind of metal flatware that is kind of like what you get at like Cougar Woods or Moody or something like that. It's not high quality. You probably wouldn't um, think about having that in your house. All right. And then a more fine dining concept is going to have very specific plateware to each course. It's going to be very heavy duty. Most of your plates, like if you go to some place that's very expensive, the plateware itself is going to cost $30 to $40 per plate. And it is purchased just to enhance the design and the plating of that food. So in fine dining, guests are going to expect multiple forks, knives with their various courses. We can also see there's a difference between wine glasses. So at a very high-end restaurant, you might have like a 20-ounce Bordeaux glass, or even a 12-ounce all-purpose wine glass is going to look much more impressive than maybe a 6-ounce Libby cup or an 8-ounce, something like that. All right, so for your assignment, there's going to be a chart in Canvas, and I want you to compare two different locations. And in the chart, I've suggested Hillstone and Chili's. Okay, so Hillstone, you can look it up. It is a very upscale American restaurant. Just think of it as it's pretty fine dining. And then you can compare it to a Chili's. So I want you to consider what you think the difference will be for the quality of those items that are listed in that chart. That'll be your assignment for this week. If you have any questions, please let me know, and have a great week.